Hello and welcome. I am so excited you are tuning in to our behavior breaks. I am Jennifer Brewer, Behavior Support Specialist at the OUR Education Cooperative. I look forward to sharing with you about the ABCs of behavior. What are they? How do we determine the ABCs? And why they can help you. Let's get started. ABC stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. I bet you have heard those words used separately, but maybe some of you watching this haven't heard those terms used together. So how do they relate to each other? Why do they relate to each other? The antecedent is what happens immediately before the behavior. People often refer to antecedents as triggers to behavior. Think about when you are driving and the traffic light turns to red. What do? Hopefully you press on the brake, bringing your vehicle to a stop. The light turning to red was the antecedent or trigger for you to press down on the brake. Here you can see a list of common antecedents that might occur in your classroom or setting. Behavior is any observable and measurable thing a living organism does. It is actually a form of communication. When our students are behaving, whether appropriately or inappropriately, they are communicating something to us. When we talk about changing behavior, the problem behavior is known as the target behavior. It simply means the behavior has been chosen or targeted for change. Remember I said behavior is observable and measurable? I want to talk about that just a little bit more. When we do not clearly define our students' behaviors, it makes it impossible to take valid data necessary for behavior change. How many of us have used terms such as off-task, defiant, non-compliant, etc. when describing a student's behavior? I was guilty of this early in my career before I started studying behavior. Let's think about off-task. What does that even look like? Odds are, when you and I say off-task, we are probably thinking differently about what behaviors our students are exhibiting. So instead of off-task, we need to describe exactly what we see. We might see our student walking around the classroom, looking at materials or other items that are not necessary for the task. And the student might be playing with or manipulating other supplies around the room. Or, time to open our Chromebooks and get started. Maybe our student stays in their area but plays with personal items, such as swinging the lanyard or other school supplies rather than following teacher directives. Or,
all right, students, today we're going to do our unit on planets. I want you to log into your Chromebooks and go to your Google Classroom.
Maybe our student doesn't necessarily wander around the classroom, but leaves the assigned task or area multiple times for various reasons unrelated to the task, such as picking up their pencil, getting paper, blowing their nose, etc. When we clearly define the behavior, we can better communicate with others, collect valid data, and more effectively change the behavior. Consequences refer to any stimulus or event that happens directly after a behavior. The word consequence has a negative connotation in our society. If you behave inappropriately, you will receive a consequence. However, when we are talking about behavior, consequences only refer to what happens immediately after a behavior occurs and have no inherent positive or negative value. Consequences can either increase, decrease, or maintain behavior in the future. Consequences can be planned, which are systems we have in place, such as your student is late to class, so they receive a tardy slip. Everyone knows the procedure. Or consequences can be unplanned, such as your student saying something in class and peers laugh. The peers laughing would be an unplanned consequence. Remember, consequence does not mean discipline. It is simply the immediate response to a behavior. Here is a list of common consequences that might occur in your classroom or setting. When determining the ABCs, you have to clearly define the behavior, like I talked about earlier. Once you have that behavior definition, you're ready to begin determining the antecedents and consequences to your student's behavior. To do this, you or another staff member will directly observe your student. When observing, always start with the behavior. Once the behavior occurs, you can determine what happened immediately before that triggered the behavior. This is your antecedent. You then determine any response to the behavior, which is the consequence. This response can come from adults and or peers. Now, sometimes it may be difficult to identify the antecedent to any given behavior. When you are identifying antecedents, think about a couple things. Where does the behavior happen? Maybe the classroom or another area in the school? With whom does the behavior occur? Does the behavior occur around certain peers or staff members and only around those peers and staff members? When does the behavior happen? Is it at a certain time of day or during a certain class? And one more thing. Think about what activity is happening when the behavior occurs. Maybe the behavior only occurs during small group or individual tasks. Maybe it only occurs during PE when the coach says they will be playing basketball that day. The antecedent to a behavior may not be obvious. You may need to consider other things such as noise level in the classroom or number of individuals in the area, or other environmental conditions such as the lighting, the noise in the hallway, and even is the classroom door open or closed. Let's imagine a situation where a student is often using explicits towards the teacher in the classroom and throwing materials. We can see here the student is using explicits. Once the behavior occurs, remember, we determine what happened immediately before the behavior, which is our antecedent. It appears the student was working. The antecedent could be the student was left alone with an assignment or task. Let's see what the immediate consequence was. The teacher has responded to the student and appears to be providing assistance on the assignment. When observing and collecting ABC data, using an ABC checklist can help make the process easier and more efficient. When we want to change behavior, it is vital to know the function of the behavior. Function of behavior simply means why our student is exhibiting these behaviors. There are two main functions. One is to gain or obtain something, and the other is to escape or avoid something. When we want to change behavior, we have to address the function. So how do we know the function? Once ABC data has been collected, the data can be analyzed to determine a pattern in the antecedents, behavior, and consequences. This pattern helps guide us in developing a hypothesis of why our students exhibit the behaviors. We are then able to implement function-driven interventions necessary to effectively change the student's behavior. Remember the situation with the student using explicits with the teacher? If the ABC data shows a pattern with these ABCs, the function of the behavior could be to obtain the teacher's attention. The teacher can use this information to implement an intervention that provides the student with adult attention before the behaviors occur and also teach the student how to appropriately obtain attention. Thank you for tuning in to this behavior break on ABCs. I hope you have a better understanding of what they are and how to use them to assist in implementing effective behavior strategies that help your student be successful in your classroom. Please tune in to more behavior breaks created by the Arkansas Behavior Support Specialists.